Hi, it's Ray from ProShaper in Charlton, Massachusetts, and guess what? We're going to do something different tonight. I thought what I'd do in this video is do some of the fundamentals of English wheeling. There's a lot of people that'll stumble on my YouTube channel and they'll go, wow, this is really cool, but it's really not realistic for me. I really need to know some of the real beginner fundamentals. So that's what I'm hoping to do tonight. Now, I didn't want to just take a piece of metal and make some kind of compound curve shape. I want everything to have a purpose. So I have this buck here, this wire form buck, and when you use the English wheel, one of the options you have is to just do stretching, and you can make this all with the English wheel. You don't need any shrinking capability at all. You don't even need a kick shrinker or anything. All you need is the English wheel. You don't need a mallet, you don't need a stump, you don't need anything. You'll do more welding and we'll make more pieces. So for the example, I cut a blank out, and this is a 20 gauge steel blank, and I'm going to make this panel that goes right here like this. This is one of the panels and one of the ways that you could do this, make this fender. So I just eyeballed it. I didn't make a paper pattern or anything. This is just for the demonstration of the different English wheel principles. So this is the blank, and after you cut it, usually the cutter you use, even if it's a stomp shear or I use the cordless shear, it'll curl the edge a little bit. So you either grind it, or I put it in a Planischen hammer with flat dies and I'll knock it down and I still grind it, and then you can sand it with 80 paper. You want your edges of your material to be not sharp for two reasons. One, they don't bite you as bad on your hands, and two, when you go into the wheel, they won't bite into your wheel at all. Now, I generally run soft wheels. All the wheels I've been using for 30 years or more have always been soft on the bottom. I have a hard wheel on the top, and I've found no problem having soft wheels on the bottom, providing you take care of them. And if you get in a problem, I'll show you later in this video how to clean it up. So we're going to just do a couple fundamentals with this panel, and we're going to show. Now, what the English do is a wheel tracking pattern, and generally I don't follow that rule so much. So I should go get my gloves. Let me get some gloves. So one of the things, the first thing you do is putting the panel into the English wheels. You see people go like this, and oh yeah, you can do that. If you've got hardened wheels, the bottom wheels, even then it's not a good practice because it can draw you in. I prefer to go in at a 45-degree angle and you just walk right in very easily. I like the top adjusters. It's right here available to me. I don't have to go like this. I got my hand right up here, no problem. So, some of the fundamentals. Now, I got a low crown wheel on here. Now, the first misconception about an English wheel is they'll say, oh, we're making this panel right here. I got to get the anvil that matches that contour. So they'll take an anvil and they go, oh no, that one's too strong. And then they'll go to the next one. Look at that, that's pretty good. I think I'll use that one. Well, that approach will work, sorta, but it'll make a lot of marks on your panel. You always want to use the flattest anvil possible. Well, you go, well, how will that work? And I'll show you how that works. But first, I'm just going to show you that in a situation like this, we're going to say make this panel. I might have a little extra metal, but we're going to need some here and here. We're going to make the panel from here to here. So that's good, a good compound curve there. So what's happening is, if you're going to stretch shape this panel, you're going to have to stretch the center of this panel out. Now, if you were making this with shrinking, you would shrink this edge. So it's exact opposite. It depends on what method you're using. We're doing a stretch method, so we're going to stretch the center. We don't want to stretch the edges. That'll counteract everything we do. So most of our stretching is going to be in the middle here. So you have to figure out on the panel where that middle is going to be. You don't have. It's not that important right early on in the game, but sort of in the middle. Now, if you were doing a strict tracking method, you would be working in that middle really closely tracked all the time. And slowly but sure you would come out to the edges. Mark stepped on the Planischen hammer. So now, running the panel in the wheels is the first thing you're going to have to learn how to do, how to navigate over the panel. How do you get over to here? We just kind of go, and over you go. When you first do this for the first time, it's not that simple. And I always tell my students, don't think about it. If you think about it, you're going to be in trouble. And I always use the analogy of everybody learns how to tie their shoes, and that's a super complicated task. Tying a pair of shoes, a sneaker shoe or something like that, is probably hundreds of times more complicated than trying to move this panel through these two wheels to get to the destination you want. But somehow when you're 5 years old or whatever, your mother shows you 2 or 3 times and you kind of follow her, and somehow the magic just happens. You don't have to think about it, your brain just does it. We'll never figure out how this stuff works, but that's how it works. The same way with riding a bike. Riding a bike is super complicated. So this is a pretty simple task. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes for most people to learn how to navigate on a panel. But then once you learn how to navigate, you can do it blindfolded. So what we're going to do is we're navigating through the panel, and we've got a pressure, and all my wheels I have one red marker on my wheel to find out where I'm at. So I'm here, and if I kept wheeling at that pressure, it would probably take me about 3 years to make this panel. So that means the machine is telling me, I'm getting the feedback from the panel that I don't have enough pressure. So what do? I got to increase the pressure. So I could increase the pressure to way over here, but that might be a little extreme. Let's take it a little at a time. So we went about from 9 o'clock to say 12 o'clock. So we turned it 90 degrees, and a little bit's happening now. You feel a little bit more resistance as you push through. But let's try it this way. Now we've gone 180 degrees. We're at 3 o'clock. Now there's a little more resistance. It's feeling pretty good. And it wouldn't matter if this was steel or aluminum. A lot of people in the comments are saying, oh boy, I know you like that aluminum, but I do all steel work. Can you show some steel? Well, typically I'd use 19 gauge for this job, but I've been calling around. My usual supplier for 19 gauge, nope, they're no longer carrying it. And that used to be the case years ago in the West, and a lot of other parts of the country. It was hard to get 19 gauge, but it was always easy in New England to get 19 gauge. But apparently we can't get 19 gauge anymore. So I haven't given up yet. So I've got a piece of 20 gauge in here. If I had a piece of 18 gauge, it would just take a little longer to make it move. So the idea here is to track more in the center than on the edges, but you can't do just the center. Because if you do just the center, you'll get a big rib raised up there. Now, as you can see, the panel is starting to shine up. It doesn't matter whether it's copper or brass or bronze or aluminum or steel. If your wheels are polished, it will shine up really nice. you're printing that buff from the top wheel right onto the panel. So now, as we go through that cycle, we did a lot in the middle, and we got sort of a low to medium pressure, and we've got the panel going this way now. We've let it go that way. We've let it droop down. But let's see what we actually have. Just a few minutes, and it's a pretty low crown wheel. And you can see what we have there is a crown in the center that diminishes towards the end, diminishes towards the sides. So let's see how far we actually went. And this has no reverse or anything in it. It's just a standard compound curve. So if we put that like that, we have about 7/8 of an inch of rise in the panel. So it only took a few minutes to get to 7/8 of an inch with that pressure. If we gave it more pressure, we'd probably get a little more rise. So let's put it in again, and we'll give it a little more pressure. All right, now we've went 360 degrees, one revolution, and there's good pressure on it now. Now remember, this is the flattest anvil I have here. It has about a 1/16 of an inch drop off on the edges. It's 3-inch anvil, so it has a flat that's about, what is it? It's about 3/8, maybe 7/16 of an inch of actual contact when it makes its little track. All right, now let's see, that's a few more minutes. And I'll put that. So we bumped the pressure up, and now we are at about 1 3/8 of an inch or so. Now, you always have to be super clean with your wheels. Oil, residue, we washed this panel with lacquer thinner before, but there's oil in the gloves, there's oil in the metal, and we'll back that off a little bit to get in. Go back to where we were and maybe give it another little bit. So you see what's happening here is I'm allowing the panel to droop down like that, which causing it to vibrate, and I'm getting a little bit of a little surface anomaly from those vibrations. But I'm going to take this flat wheel as far as I can to show, this is just a demonstration to show how much you can get, crown you can get out of just a flat wheel. And you get into a decent rhythm here and go pretty fast. The more you go over to the edges, the more you take the shape out. The more you stay in the middle, the more the shape goes in. Now this doesn't look anything like the fender piece, and that's the mystery of the magic of shaping, is you don't worry about it looking like the piece until the end, because you're working this out of arrangement. In this case here, you're definitely working it out of arrangement. Later on in the development of the panel, you'll work it in arrangement. What is arrangement? Arrangement is the bending that makes it conform to the shape that you really want. We're taking advantage of the power of the English wheel, which allows you to work a panel in this curl arrangement for quite a while with just a low crown wheel, and yet it will yield a high crown panel. In this case it'll be a medium crown or so, but you can't even get a high crown out of it. So we haven't been giving any attention to the ends of the panel, so I'm going to give the ends just a little bit of attention here, just so I don't get a sharp difference in the surface flow. This end I got to do this way, and then I'll bring it over to this end and do this end. Now that was a few more minutes. And let's see where we're at now. So there's my low crown wheel, and obviously that's not really a low crown panel. So now I'm probably 2 inches or better in crown on that panel. Now let's see if we've made any difference here as far as fitting goes. No, not yet. I mean, it's a lot better, but it's got a long ways to go. So it's going to need quite a bit of crown. That might need 4 inches of crown or so before we get there. So we're going to wipe the panel, and we'll go up 1 on the wheel now. And that should take us a little further. If you're not familiar with this English wheel, this I call the YouTube English wheel. I designed the frame, and I sell the plans, full-size plans for the frame. And you just got to go on our website, proshaper.com, and you'll see that frame plan. It's made out of 4-inch square tubing. It's 1/4-inch wall. Upper adjuster, lower yoke holder. They have a common bolt pattern. All that's in the plans. It's super stable. It don't go anywhere. You can put wheels on it. You can put a hinge on it and hinge it into the wall if you got space problems. So right now, if you look at the panel, to tell you the truth, I'm not a good master of the English technique, which is pattern wheeling. I call myself a jazz wheeler. I just wheel where I see that I need to wheel. I'm not methodical about it. I correct on the run. So I got a little stronger right here, and if you look at that horizon view, it's a little uneven. But it's early in the panel, it doesn't make any difference right now. And everything can be corrected. So we'll pump the pressure up with this wheel now. See if we can get this to come up to what we want it to do. Now, as your contact area gets narrower, the panel will rise faster, meaning you get more area in the panel, but it'll also cause smoothness problems. This wheel is still a really good wheel, so it still has a, what is it, about 5/16 contact area or so. So it's only when you get down to like 1/8 inch contact areas that you have what I call a striping wheel. It just puts stripes on the panel. So again, this is real early in the game. You can hear it when I go over here. That's the panel where it first started. It had this unevenness on its surface. That's how it came out of the mill. And now here it's a nice smooth swishing sound. And that's where it's been refined by the English wheel. So I'm doing half at a time now because it's harder to go all the way around like that. I'm going to do half and then do the other half. It'll all get blended together later. And you really don't have to be really careful until the last 10% of the development of the panel. The really good practitioners of the traditional English method, which is all about contact, it's all about tracking patterns, watching your contact area, marking, and tracking it perfectly. To me, that just gets a little old after a while. So I just learn to read the surface as I'm working the panel. And if I see a deficiency in the surface, I just head over there, fix it, and continue on my way. You could call this pumping up the panel. Alright, now let's see what we got now. So we raised the anvil size, we went up one size, and now we have about 4 inches. Now let's see what we got over here. You can see that if I go in the center, it's going to take that much, but that's a little deceptive because I'm pushing that down on the flat bench, and this isn't on a flat plane here, so we're getting closer. We're probably about at least 50 to 60% of the way to make that panel fit. Let's give it one more blast with that wheel and see where we're at. And put that on the buck. We see we're hitting the wires really strongly right in the center, plus these ends are way up. These ends have to come down. And that will happen once you put more area in the center of this panel here. So give it another blast here. And yes, you could pound this all out on a beater bag. You can pound it out on the hollow of the stump. You could put the shrinks in. You could use a kick shrinker, and that'll all contribute to bringing this center up. Or you can stretch shape the whole thing. After we get this done, we could cut it in half and then measure to see how much thickness we lost. It'll always surprise people that you really don't lose that much thickness creating these shapes. And if you start doing wheeling, you can cancel your membership at the gym, because you get a pretty good workout doing all this stuff. It's good cardio. Let's see what we got now. Now we'll try to put it in arrangement here. We'll induce this curved roll into it. And you can see it's starting to look like the panel. So let's see how far off we are now. We're still a good ways off. The longer this is, the more area change has to happen. So if we made it shorter, it'd be less. So let's see what we got. Now we're getting to a point where we can actually clamp it on the wire form. And that'll tell us where we're at really closely. Whoop. So it's fighting me on clamping here because it's really springy. But now what we can do is we actually measure where we're at. And you can see this has to come down to here. So if we measure that, now we can monitor our progress every time we cycle it. And overall, we don't have that much time in it. It looks like if I take out all the talking and everything, I probably got 30 minutes in it, 30 minutes or so. So I put this like that, and that has to come down about 2.5 inches. So that's a quantification of where you're at. That comes down, this will come down, the whole thing. How does that come down? Well, it's super tight right here. So it needs more area right here to pop that out in order for that to come down. Down the bottom, it's not that bad. We've got it almost fitting pretty good there. The side is not too bad. Right here in the middle, we've got what I call a peak. See how this peaks up over here? Mark, can you get the camera over here? See how that peaks up right there? That's just crying out for more area right here. As you add area here, this peak will go down. So right now, that peak is about 1.5 inches away from where it's supposed to be. So these are the, we're going to quantify this. So we got 2 inches up here and we got 1.5 inches here. Other than that, it's got the radius flowing pretty nice. The surface quality is not perfect, but it's in the ballpark. So now we're going to take and we'll mark what I call a home. So I'm going to put it back at this spot every time so we get the same reading. If you put it on the bucket at a different point, then you won't get the same reading. So I'm putting a couple marks here to try to get that at the same spot. At 2 points at least to mark to get it. It's still pretty early for the homes, but alright, so we take those 3 clamps off and we give it another go. Now we're going to do, we were doing half from here to here, now we're going to do a little bit in the middle. Pump that up a little bit in the middle. And you see how that peak is right there right now? The way you get that to go down is you just go over here and that'll settle that right in. And typically I do 45s like this, inboard of where that peak is. And see that peak goes right away. That just balances the panel out. Alright, so that got rid of the peak. And then we got some on this edge here, so this edge is waving a little bit. We'll take that and we'll get rid of that wave by 45ing. It's 45 degrees to the edge. Why 45? Well, if you go 90, it's very easy to pop out, and it's less. It will pop out less if you go at the 45s because it's still on the panel, but it's doing what you want to do. You can see that wave just go right away. That is something you're going to see on every single panel you work on. You're going to see that wavy edge. And I got one down here. I got a peak on that, so I can pop that out. Now if you're working with a panel and the panel starts hitting the frame of the machine. Well, we spent a lot of time bondoing this all up and making it smooth and everything. And we did a semi-decent paint job on it. So if you do the same machine, you buy my plans and you paint it all up, you don't want to be taking your panel and banging it into the frame. So if you get to a situation where somehow it's hitting the frame, all you have to do is turn it and you work out here and you're in the same location except you just turned it 180 and you don't hit the frame. So we're going to settle this end down by 45ing. Settle that right down. A lot of people would run right over to a kick shrinker, and I really do not like that kick shrinker deal at all because it leaves all these marks all around the panel. I want my panels looking like chrome plate when I'm done with them. That's one of the appeals of an English wheel, is that it really does a beautiful polish job on your panels. I got to get Mark to move the camera so I can get over this way. Do a 45 on this end now. Now, one thing you don't want to do is do any rolling right on the edge. That's totally verboten. That releases all the area, change the shape that you put into the panel, so you don't want to do that. Alright, so now let's wheel out the center a little more here. Alright, now, at first, as I was developing the panel, as a tool to allow me to see where I was going, I was able to push all the edges down and measure the advance of the rise as it developed. Now, I've got a lot of area change, a lot of shape in the panel. I'm cleaning it up. His gloves have a lot of oil in them, apparently. It all up. Now what we do for quantifying, before we were quantifying with how much the rise was with the straight edge, now we're going to quantify it. Remember, we had 2 inches over here and we had 1.5 inches over here. Well, we settled the edges down and we gave a little more work to the center of the panel. So let's put this on here approximately. Now I've clamped it with 2 clamps there. I might get a little bit of different reading because I only had 3 clamps before. Let's see what we got now. These clamps are going on easier now. I got 3 clamps there. Okay. The panel surface quality looks pretty good. And what do we have here now? We had 2 inches. That's a little less than 2 inches. Now I'd say it's about 1 3/4 inches. It didn't rise that much. And this This is actually a little more now because we've clamped it a little better. So we're about 2 inches and 1 3/4 here. But the panel is starting to look like the fender that we want it to be. Let's give it another blast. All right, we're back in the wheel again. We'll give it a little more. Give it more pressure. Whoop, wrong way. That edge is unsettled, a little wave in it, so we'll give it the 45 again. Keep it settled down. What we're doing is just working inboard of that edge a little bit, which balances the panel out and gets rid of that wave. Now, we look at this panel. This end of the fender is pretty straight, so it doesn't have as much compound, and I've got a lot of compound. It might have went a little bit too strong. This is where most of the compound is, right in here, so we'll see what we got in a minute. So I need to do more work at the top because there's more curve right here than there is here. Here there's, I believe, some curve. See the curve right here? All right, that's about 3/8 of an inch of rock right here. But now if you go between these three, here you have almost an inch of rock. So it's considerably more work has to be done on the top segment of the panel. Well, what happens if you goofed and you put too much work on this side, which doesn't have as much crown? It's very simple. All you got to do is work the edges a little bit. But make sure your mistake doesn't get out of hand. If you go tremendously over your goal, then you're going to have to work a lot on the edges in order to straighten that back out again. So that's where the feedback from the buck, the quantification of everything is so important. The buck is the blueprint for the panel. Just like you're making a machine part, you can't make it up. You have to follow the dictates of the blueprint. Alright, now let me put the roll into the panel again here. Now once you have that area change built into the panel, it really wants to make that roll, so it rolls over pretty easy. Let's clamp this up and see what we have. I'm going to move the position a little bit to make sure I got enough room on my edges here. That's a little better. So I've actually moved my homes a little here. Alright, here's where we're at now. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clamps on it, no problem right now. Now because I've got it clamped differently and I have it moved on its location, the homes are a little different. We're still reading about 1.5 inches here. But now this is a real true measurement. This one, bring that up to, that's about 1 3/8 inches or so. So it's greatly improving. The surface quality is not perfect, but that comes later in the game. That's the last 5% or so. So let's wheel it one more time and see what we get one more shot. Remember, we're going to put most of our emphasis on from here up. We're fitting the buck pretty decent. There's no overdevelopment anywhere. We're still underdeveloped. At this point, I think I'm about 50 minutes into actually working on the panel. That's with all the commentary too. I've got pretty decent pressure on here right now. Trying to speed it up just a little bit here. So you have to go over to the edges, but you can't dwell on, you're not on the edge, up to the edge. And we're going to have to deal with this over here. You can see a little peak there. We're going to have to 45 through that. But most of your time is going to be dwelling here in the center where you need most of that area change. But if you just stop here at this point all the time, that's going to cause a demarcation line. So every once in a while you got to fade it in down below. Now we'll 45 that end a little bit. Easy say, no easy do. I might have to lower the pressure a little bit. There we go. All right, let's see what that did. We're going to set the arrangement. All that is a belly bender here. Put your belly up against it, push down with your hands like this. Gently induce that roll into it. Try to get it consistent. Nothing is permanent or set yet. We're still in the development phase, so what you're always going to be on the lookout for is any anomaly. Alright, so the only anomaly I see right now is we still have a peak right there. So I could give that a little bit more attention to get that peak out. See, I'm stretching inboard of where that peak was, and that'll settle that peak right in. And I did 90s, but I was being really careful. I've lowered the pressure a little bit, and now I'm doing 45s. I put my arrangement back in, and let's see where we're at. Let me put a little more radius in it. And when we're done with this panel, there'll be no tension, no springiness or anything. It will just plop right on there. And what you've done when you get to that end goal is you've created the perfect area and arrangement values to make the panel. There's an inherent area and arrangement value in every surface. And your goal is to try to get it as close as possible. 100% perfection is almost impossible, but we always strive for it. That's the most important clamp right there. You want to get that radius. You can see how important being able to clamp onto the buck is. This is why I love wire forms. You can see what you're doing. You can clamp to it so easily. And the only bad thing that wire forms get a bad rap for is that you can't make them in a wood router off a CAD file. You can use that same CAD file, bend your wires to the CAD file, and assemble them all. The assembly process is going to be a little trickier, but if you pay attention, it's time well spent to make that wire form buck. And once you've made this buck, it'll basically last forever. Wood bucks have a lifespan. So, we're getting really close. We're at about an hour now into the video. I don't like to make the videos too much longer. So we still have this peak peeking up here, but it's greatly reduced. Now we're down to about an inch or so. As we work the panel, that'll just keep settling it in. And you see this edge is off here. As that settles in, that edge will grow and come out here, and we'll have enough panel there to make the edge treatment. And we're over this wire, so now this part of the fender is basically, there's very little area value change in it here. It's just a flat panel, but it'll have a flange on it. A lot of them do have a flange. This particular one doesn't have a flange because it bolts up this way rather than into the flange. So that would be just a very simple panel that's just arranged, and then you do the weld right there, right on that wire. You can clamp it and you can tack it all together right on the buck, and you don't have to worry about burning the buck up or anything, and you can clamp it perfectly. And in the process, you might overdevelop a little bit. I might be a little bit overdeveloped here. It'll tell later. And if that's the case, all I got to do is work these edges a little bit, 5 minutes on either edge, and it'll be perfect. Still have more area change here, which will bring that down, bring that down. So I think that's all I'm going to do tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. And because this is like the fundamentals of English wheeling, please comment in the comments section. If you have any questions or anything, I'll answer all the questions, not only in the comments section, but I'll answer them on part 2 of the fundamentals of the English wheel and how to make a simple panel like this fender panel. So thanks for watching. Keep subscribing. Please share the video. check out our website, check out our English wheel frame plans. Thanks again, it's Ray from ProShaper Workshop.